Welcome back to Bills and Business, your go-to podcast for the latest developments in Texas legislation and business. I'm the host, Laura Carr, co-founder of USLege. And today, I'm excited to welcome Andy Cates to the show. Andy is the owner of Cates Legal Group, where he provides legal counsel to candidates, PACs, and nonprofits across local, state, and federal levels. He's also the author of Texas Ethics Laws Annotated, the leading resource on campaign finance and lobby laws in Texas. In this episode, we'll discuss legislative and campaign law, his vision for integrating AI into government relations, and a lot more. Thank you for coming up.
This was fun.
Well, it's about to be session and excited to have you on to chat.
Yeah.
For those who don't know you, you want to just say a little bit more about you, how they should.
Sure. My name's Andrew Cates. I go by Andy most of the time. I am a political lawyer. I've been doing that for, 10, 12 years, something like that. I, primarily do kind of like ethics commission compliance type stuff. I work in different cities as well, represent people in front of the ethics commission, help them out with, candidates, PACs, nonprofits, kind of landscape of all campaign finance and lobby law. I've been a lobbyist, but this will be the first session in 14 years that I won't be a registered lobbyist.
Is that relieving to you?
It is extremely relieving. I will admit freely, I was not a good enough lobbyist to do it forever. I never had the drive to go out into the districts during the interim, during campaign season.
Oh, yeah, I did that. It was brutal.
Yeah, so there's so many different types of lobbyists out there. There's the policy wonks. There are the people that almost like, let's say, country club type people that, they just know a bunch of people. They're either, wealthy to begin with, or they are in the right spots to see everybody, in the spa or in the gym or whatever, at the country club. And then they're what I call skeet shoot lobbyists that always go to all the barbecues, all the skeet shoots, all the golf tournaments, all that kind of stuff. And, and then there are ones that pay for meals like crazy during session and take everybody out and all that. There's just so many different types of lobbyists. Sure. And that was never my thing. It was to go out into the districts and spend all that time. It's like, I've got a kid, I've got a wife, I want to be home. And so I never really built those like one-on-one campaign relationships that you kind of need to get the member's cell phone number, and sure, you come up to the Capitol and you don't have to mess with staff. You just go straight to the member kind of thing, So that never really was my deal. And so, especially now that I'm in San Antonio and I didn't spend the time to get to know any of the new members, it's honestly kind of a relief. Just like, you know what, I'll be done. I'll just do the legal side for a while, and I'll be a what I like to call a bill assassin. Which is to work on points of order during session for hire, and that's just fine. I'm fine to be done with it.
Well, I know you've become an expert in elections and campaign law. How did you get into that niche?
Very randomly, accidentally even. I have so I started at the. Okay, let me go way back. Okay, I graduated from law school at the end, in 2007, got licensed to practice at November of 2007, 2 months before the 2008 recession.
Okay.
Right. So I was a baby lawyer and there were no jobs. Brutal. And so brutal. So I worked 3 jobs as a lawyer, as a licensed lawyer.
Wow.
To pay rent, and sleeping on a buddy's couch down here in Austin. And one of those jobs was he graciously gave me a job on a judicial campaign down here in Austin. And so I was working on the campaign, and it just so happened that I liked politics and I knew some law, and I worked a little bit in criminal defense at the time, that I started working at the Capitol for the House Democratic Caucus under Jim Dunham at the time. And then I started with now Congressman Mark Vesey for that session in 2009. And then Pete Gallegos stole me away from Mark when he got the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee to be committee clerk. And so my first session, I was with Mark VC for like a month and a half and then straight into committee land. And then after that, everybody got knocked out. Right after that was the 2010 Tea Party wave. So all of those guys got beat. And so I was kind of out into the wilderness. I went into a law firm where I learned very quickly that I do not want to be sitting behind a desk all the time. It's just sitting at a law firm. It was just from the fun of being at the Capitol to sitting behind a desk was not my thing. So anyway, so right after that, I got picked up by the Texas Realtors, and I was there to be basically like during session, I was the person to read all of the bills and to analyze all the bills and to, run all the committees through the different bills of like, do we want to track this? Do we not want to track this? All that kind of stuff. So I read every single bill. And that's where I got very comfortable with bill tracking software. Well, as comfortable as I could be at the time.
Sure.
But then I was also in charge. I was told I was to be in charge of the PAC that they have and make sure we don't get in trouble. And I was like, you mean your multi-million-dollar PAC, like one of the largest, at least at the time in Texas? Yes, keep us out of trouble. So I had to learn it all very quickly on the job.
Okay.
I had a great mentor, Ed Shack. He was the outside counsel, and I spent far too much of the realtor's money on his retainers because we would talk and talk and talk and talk, and he would bill us for every minute.
Yes, they do. We've learned that.
Yeah, me too. So anyway, that's where I got to learn it all, and that's where I started with the idea of, hey, there are legal practice guides out there for all these kind of areas of law. So let me just pick one up at the state bar annual meeting one time. And I went and they didn't have one. And so I said, damn it, pound my fist on the table. I'm going to make one. So I spent 2 years of my off time developing one, and really just for myself. And I told people about it and they got excited about it. So I started selling it.
There wasn't one in existence.
It didn't exist. So I made one.
You're on your second book now.
Yes. So the first one is I have pushed off the 9th edition until after this session because I want to get all the new laws and everything into it. And the second one, I just kicked it out again, mostly for myself. Now that I live down in San Antonio, for the San Antonio Ethics Code.
Sure.
It's the same sort of thing. It's a kind of a shove together of all the laws and rules and opinions and cases and everything that apply to San Antonio proper. So it's the second one out now.
So who does this book, what's your audience for this type of book?
Me.
Well, I've seen it on people's desks, so it's clearly not just you.
Yeah. So the San Antonio one is definitely much more esoteric and a much smaller audience. The bigger book, the Texas version, is for, people like me. There are not very many, honestly, lawyers that do this in particular. Me, any associations out there, trade associations, industry associations that are interested, universities sometimes with their law libraries or something. But honestly, my biggest purchaser is the Texas Ethics Commission itself. They purchase copies for, their whole enforcement division, their legal division, all of that.
I know that.
Yeah. It's like they're the biggest purchaser of the book.
Wow.
So that's a great, brush my shoulder off kind of thing. It feels good.
And obviously we have, brought you on to do a lot of the ethics checking out in Texas and making sure we're following all the rules, especially working in government now and then in other states. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And that was kind of the impetus behind where we got connected in the first place.
Yes. Well, we could definitely chat about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
So going into more of the AI and government relations, you mentioned the bill tracking software. What had you been doing prior to us meeting that sparked us even getting connected?
Yeah, I, what y'all are doing, let's say we are doing now at USLege is something that I have been thinking about for almost a decade. I have been, I used another bill tracking software while we were at the Realtors, and I got about as good as anybody can get at using it, but it was clunky. It wasn't it. And I have been thinking and dreaming and ideating for, like I said, better part of a decade about there's got to be a better way to do it kind of thing, right? When I got to, after the realtors, I went to be general counsel and director of government affairs at the Texas Nurses Association. And there I was in charge of doing, really all of the lobbying and everything, but our lobby day at the Capitol, nurse day at the Capitol, bring in 300, 400, whatever nurses and swarm the Capitol, just like everybody does it. There's like 200 lobby days at the Capitol every year.
Oh yeah, I've been there through session with everybody's in a white coat.
It's bonkers. It's like United Teacher Colors Day. Of Benetton kind of day. It's like white coat Capitol Day for the doctors. It's crazy. There's tons of people floating around the Capitol. And I was using a spreadsheet to do all the registration, bring everybody's names and addresses in, and then go through in some columns and match them up to their representatives and their senators, and then call the offices and find out who the scheduler is, and then try to figure out how many people line up. You want to, split off people from Central Texas area because that's much more likely that people are going to show up to a Capitol Day from the Central Texas area than from Amarillo or Beaumont or whatever. And, you're going to get 50 registrations from the Austin area where you're going to get 2 from Amarillo or something. You don't want to have 50 people show up to a representative's office. You split them off to other offices. Anyway, it's a nightmare of scheduling and organization and all that. So I went to a software development company here in town and asked them if they would be interested. And my pitch to them was, I have got a great idea. I know the audience, I know the market, but I don't know how to build it, and I have no money to pay you. Who's in?
Yes.
And, everybody said no. One software company said yes, and we went 50-50 on it, essentially, and built it, and we called it Lobby Days. And I built that in 2018. It was active for the 2019 session. And we were gearing up, making some changes, going for 2.0. So March 2020, everything shut down. I had to make a snap decision on whether or not I thought that there would be big groups of people at the Capitol again when it came around to January. And I assumed no, I was right.
Yeah.
And so we put it on the shelf, and it's been there ever since. But I also realized very quickly that type of software is not a standalone product. It's just not, because it's
seasonality. It's
seasonality, and everybody only does one, so it's not, you don't have to use it multiple times. It's not a thing that, I know like some of the metrics are you track eyeballs on the screen and how long people engage on your website, and they just wouldn't, right? They do it for a whole lot for a short amount of time and then dump it. And so trying to price it is hard and all that. Anyway, it wasn't a standalone. It's an add-on.
Sure.
And so I realized that, obviously, and started looking at what it would cost to build a bill tracker. And I went around to angels and VCs and, all kinds of people. And I went to a, Univision pitch contest and won it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And
I did not know that.
Yeah. It was over at the Google building down here.
How fun.
Back in the day. Yeah. And I won it. And they were like, your product's just too far along. We don't know what we can offer you here, but congratulations, I guess. So it was all cool and everything. But, when I went and talked to everybody, they were like, yeah, it's going to cost $500,000 to build this. And I just couldn't get the money in the door. I couldn't get the right team together. So anyway, flash forward, I see you guys pop up. I realize they're going to do it. They're going to do it.
Wait, what made you think we would do it?
Well, it just, when I was doing it, AI, it's so weird to say, but like AI didn't exist yet.
It was not
in the
publicly
same capacity.
Available. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What was your first exposure to us?
I saw the marketing, I think.
Like on LinkedIn?
On LinkedIn,
No
on
way.
Facebook, on something.
That's how? Okay.
And I saw it, and and at the time, I think you only had like the kind of splash marketing page up and available. And so I put my information in. I have demoed every single bill tracking product that exists. I guarantee it. I mean, all the national ones, and my issue has always been these national groups that create these bill trackers or whatever for capitals. They are built around DC specifically because that's where all the money is. That's where the big corporations and associations go at the national level and everything. They're built around DC. And then all they do is scrape the state sites, repackage it into their platform, and say, you're welcome, now buy from us.
Sure.
Literally.
Yeah.
And I know, because I was a staffer and, I've been a lobbyist for a long time interacting with the Capitol and everything. I know that we've got some idiosyncrasies here that other people do not understand and do not know about.
Each state is totally different.
Each one is different. And you've got to do your research to understand that state and those people and what they need and what they don't need. And a repackaging of the state website is not what we need.
Right.
We need something much more robust and much more targeted and focused. And so anyway, so that, I demoed them and I was like, new one, I'm going to demo them too, because I don't want to go with who I was going with before. I'm not feeling it. And so I filled out the form and Eric called me and said, hey, I hear you're looking to do a demo. Can I ask, what your relationship is to this? What do you do? Da, da, da. And I, for better or worse, I think for better at this point,
for sure. Yeah.
I straight up told him, look, man, I am legitimately interested in a demo because I am looking for something to use for next session. But I also need to tell you transparently that I have been trying to build this for 10 years and I'm potentially a competitor of yours.
Sure.
And he was like, well, I kind of don't want to demo you now. It's like, I don't blame you.
Sure.
But we ended up talking for like 45 minutes, an hour. And then we talked again for another hour. And Eric at some point was just like, why don't you just not do that and come work with us instead? Yes, let's do that. And that's how it kicked off.
It cracked me up. I remember him telling me about it. And it was like one of you gave a little bit of info, one gave a little bit more, and then you kind of could trust each other. Which I find so unique. It's a really interesting way. But you mentioned it. You are a solo founder. I don't know how so many solo founders do it. I really think it's tough. And if you're non-technical,
I know that was the problem.
The hardest thing. So I do feel like we have such a dream team, like across the board with our team now. And having Ben, our secret weapon CTO, Eric with the go-to-market side, and then domain expertise now with both of us is really cool. But yeah, I love that. That's how we originally got connected.
I know. It's very random, but I mean, it works. And, I think that to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't have jumped on board if I didn't see huge potential.
Sure.
And I think that there is huge potential.
I am excited.
And I'm excited to be on board.
We're building $1 billion company.
Yep.
We want to do this for everywhere, the entire world, and make it easy for people to access. So I'm so glad. It's been awesome working with you. I'm excited for you to do a lot of the things in other states too.
I know.
As we start traveling around and making sure it's specific to that state because it's so custom.
Yes, it is very custom. And that's the thing that I think that we're offering right now we're offering Texas, and that I want to be able to offer these other states that the other big companies don't. They just want to do the quick scale, and obviously we want to scale fast, but
for sure,
the pinpoint, and I hate to say point twice, but what exactly as a staffer in your capital, as a lobbyist around your capital, as an association, et cetera, what are the pain points that you have engaging over there in tracking? What are they not doing for you? That's going to be the fun part for me in researching that, because figuring out the problem and finding the solution, and especially finding the technical solution, like, Ben, I think, could probably code and create anything. And, coming in and saying, this is what they're telling us is a problem. What can we do for them? I think is going to be a huge benefit.
We have a great product mind, because that was my thing. I had all these ideas, but non-technical. And so when I get to talk to the engineering team, it's so fun.
It is fun
every time, but there's so much to do.
I know.
Always more. There's always going to be more.
Every time I talk to the engineering team, we end up, 20-minute conversation turns into an hour and a half.
Because
it's like, what if we did this and did this and did this and built on this and this and that? It's fun.
So in addition to your ethics law practice and really being niche expert in that, you've also become like an AI expert. How did that happen?
Again, randomly, super randomly. It was kind of built off the election stuff. It was really started this last April. Giovanni Capriglione had a select committee on AI and emerging technology and that sort of thing. And they were only going to have one select committee hearing during the interim. They put out the agenda for that hearing, and it's got, all the different things they're going to talk about and all the different people that are invited testimony. And we're going to talk about, everything. And then one of them was elections. And I looked at the list of people that were coming, and it was like Google, Meta, TechNet, whoever, whatever.
Sure.
And I was like, they might be talking about elections broadly, but nobody there is going to be talking about like what our election law says and what AI impacts that statute and whatever. And so I called the office and said, hey, can I be invited testimony? Because I'll talk about election law stuff. And they're like, oh, it's already full. Sorry. So I just packed up and drove up to Austin and sat through the whole hearing and wrote myself in for public testimony. And I was the only public testimony person. Waited until the end of the day and got up there and just said, hey, look, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't represent anybody here. I'm just telling you that the laws that we have on the books for political advertising and deepfakes are not enough. And I think you all know that. And you all need to know that you're screwed for a year because you're not coming back to make laws until January, and they're not going to be effective until at least, May, probably September next year, 25. So you're going to have to watch this whole election cycle go with AI. You're going to have to go through this session that's starting on Tuesday with potentially AI lobbying. You know, and that's going to be an issue. And right after that, it was just kind of a throwaway thing, like, hey, you guys need to fix the law and whatever. And then all of a sudden, I started getting calls from reporters. I got calls from people to come and speak at their conferences. I'm speaking at Independent Insurance Agents Conference in a couple of weeks. I'm speaking to another group a couple of weeks after that. It's blown up, and it's completely by accident.
That's very cool. Well, you were also, in a way, warning the legislature of that you've read and what you predict is to come, which sounds like it's happening. And we can actually show a clip now of that testimony. It was a long one, but we'll pull it up. So cool. Here you go. Enjoy.
My name is Andrew Cates. I am not an expert in artificial intelligence, so you'll get a break from that. But I am an expert on the laws and regulations of campaigns, the legislature, elections, and the lobby. I've written a legal practice guide. That is the first of its kind in the state. It is also, by the way, available in house purchasing. Now in its 8th edition, and I'm one of about 20 attorneys in the state, actually in the country, that is board certified in legislative and campaign law. I know you've heard a lot from everybody today. I am a lobbyist, just so everybody knows. I'm not here representing anybody. I'm here, honestly, just on my own in my spare time, because I felt like this kind of needed a Texas legal political perspective on election law. I don't need to tell you anymore. I didn't hear a lot of it today because I was out at another meeting, but I'm sure you heard a lot about the dangers of AI and a lot about how it's going to impact elections. We all saw what happened with the fake Biden call in New Hampshire and all that. I've put some other examples in there with links to other things you can check out. But federally, there have been a couple of advancements made after the Biden robocall. The FCC made AI robocalls illegal by tying them into the overall robocall ban. However, much like regular robocalls, bad actors can get around the rule if they obtain prior express consent to call you. But how they get that consent is questionable and ripe for abuse if my cell phone has anything to say about it, because it's been on the do not call list for forever and I'm getting blown up. The Protect Elections from Deceptive AI Act is a bipartisan bill in Congress that would ban the intentional publishing of materially deceptive AI-generated political ads. But that's all federally. I know, I heard you just a minute ago, I don't know about the federal government getting into this. So in Texas, we have a good head start. After my remarks, I put a couple of charts in there from NCSL, specifically about AI laws around campaign finance and elections, and where the rest of the country stands. There's another one at the end of that is a chart of 2023 legislation and how that fared around the country as well. Most of it failed. We are actually in a better spot because of the Brian Hughes Morgan-Meyer bill, Senate Bill 751 that Renzo mentioned a minute ago about deepfakes. And that is in 255.004 of the election code that regulates political advertising. There's also another one right after that, 005, is about misrepresenting one's identity. It talks about what a deepfake is, and both of those statutes carry a Class A misdemeanor penalty. There are a couple of changes I would recommend to make to those statutes. Just so I can get through all of this, I would just say, somebody please ask me what those changes are in a minute. I would encourage you all to also, besides political advertising, also take a look at Chapter 305 of the Government Code, which regulates lobbying. The reason I didn't hear a lot of this earlier today was because I was actually at a meeting with about 30 other lobbyists talking about the Ethics Commission Sunset Bill, which is going to happen this year. Theoretically, hopefully, happen this session, and all the things that we would hope to go into that and all of that. I mentioned AI and deepfakes and the issues that could come up with lobbying specifically, and literally everyone agreed that something needs to be done because, as I write down here, regulates lobbying, lobbyist communications, legislative advertising, and grassroots advocacy. Grassroots advocacy, I know y'all have been hit with a lot. There are stuff, voter voice, one-click politics, all kinds of different phone to action, different softwares out there that people use, associations use to send out to their members to say, contact your legislator, and it's got a pre-filled out whatever they send and they blast you all in your emails and all that. I really think there's a very high likelihood that deepfakes and fake images and all that kind of stuff can and will make their way into your inboxes during session. And there's not going to be anything we can do about it this time because we're not going to have laws in place to stop it yet. So I have every reason to believe during the election cycle and during session, y'all are going to get hit with a lot of fake stuff that is potentially very untraceable because, we've got 305021 in the lobby code that prohibits false communications to legislators by lobbyists, but not by literally anybody else. And so if a lobbyist is putting it out there to other people and then they change it up and send it out, there's nothing we can do about it. So that's definitely a section to look at. One other issue very quickly that I think needs to be said, because I doubt anybody else has mentioned this today. Specifically with AI and generative AI, I was reading the most recent issue of the Texas Bar Journal, the May issue. I tried to find a link to it, but it's not up on the bar website yet. And it's a lot of the articles in there are about AI. And there was one specifically by a man named Mark Vogel about AI and intellectual property rights. And he said that there are a couple of test cases early on already with the U.S. Copyright Office and the D.C. District Court that said that no matter what input a person puts into generative AI, the output of it and the result of what you get cannot be copyrighted because a person didn't create it. And that's interesting and a little bit intimidating in terms that a lot of the laws that we have on the books here in Texas that have a penalty attached to them are specifically because a person committed an act. And if a person is not included in this, we may be able to grab some of it in terms of like political advertising. It's like cause to be distributed or cause to be published. But there are a lot of other laws out there about what a person does. And if it's not, if these courts are saying that the output is not from a person, then I don't know if it applies. So, I don't have a lot of answers. I have a lot of questions and a lot of things that I think you guys should look at. But, I would be happy to help out if anybody needs it. I'd be happy to, lend my voice and experience to it. But I do have other things specifically with the deepfake issues that I would want to recommend.
Members, any questions? I remember one of the first votes I took 12 years ago or so was about an amendment related to whether a business was a person. And so now we have to have a conversation about whether an AI software program is a person. That was the business.
And a lot of that person question is, comes around to Citizens United too, and how corporations can engage in politics and direct campaign expenditures and all of that. Well,
obviously we'd like to hear from you after this to talk about maybe because we do have an ethics sunset bill, but also there's going to be opportunities to make changes outside of that, especially when it comes to, because one of the things that we've heard about today, and if not all around the country, is people talking about at least disclosure of AI and how that can or cannot be effectively done.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that really quickly, the true source of communication bill that has the deepfake language in it, I would very, very highly recommend amending that, or making a recommendation to amend that to include photos, videos, sound, speech, text, because, not to bring up insensitive stuff, I guess, but the speaker got hit a couple of days ago with a fake image or a deceptively, altered image. And it's not against the law here, because the campaign that put it out put their name on it, and it's a photo and not a video according to the deepfake law, and so it falls into that exception.
That's right.
It falls in between.
There's multiple images,
right?
One on each side, right? And what's a video, but multiple images played really quickly,
right?
And then also it technically landed 33 days before the election.
So it wasn't electioneering technically,
right? Yeah, which may be another little edit that needs to be done.
Right. Well, in both of those statutes.
And the reason, though, is because it's unfair. It's deliberately made to deceive individuals, right? I mean, especially, because AI can make things look so realistic, and when obviously neither of those two images actually happened.
Right. And, both of those, true source and misrepresenting your identity, both have Class A misdemeanor penalties. I think I would recommend jumping it up to a third-degree felony, because I'll tell you from my experience having clients and everything, PACs and all that in this area, everybody knows the corporate ban on contributions because it's a felony, and everyone is terrified of it. And nobody really knows the penalties for all the rest of this stuff. They just know the felony one. And so if you want to have a serious solution, you got to have a serious penalty.
Sure. And I think, again, the reason why it should be against the law is not because it hurts our feelings as elected officials, right? We get that all the time, but it's because it's intentionally meant to deceive the voter. Mm-hmm. It's intentionally made to provide a different election result and to affect the integrity of our elections. Right. Members, any questions? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Right.
What were your big takeaways and advice, recommendations to the legislature?
Well, basically, that what we've got on the books right now, specifically around deepfakes and specifically around elections, that's kind of where my, let's say bailiwick is. The deepfake law that we have is in the political advertising section of the code, and it was great. So it was passed in 2019. It was great ahead of the time at the time, but everything has jumped forward so fast that now it's behind. And it needs to be picked up. And so, off the top of my head, the deepfake is specifically a video that depicts a real person, a candidate or office holder, doing something that they didn't naturally do within 30 days of an election with the intent to influence the election or to intent to deceive the viewer. There's probably another part of that too that I'm missing, but it sounds great, but there's just so many loopholes around it. Like, how do you prove intent to deceive, and how do you prove intent to influence the election? It being only 30 days before the election, we know these elections last forever now, and so just 30 days isn't nearly enough time. And then expanding the deepfake definition beyond just video to pictures, to voice manipulation, to images of scenes out there that may not include the candidate or office holder, but scenes that didn't exist, like a doomsday, fire and brimstone scene or whatever. Like, I don't know, maybe, but
sure.
But think about it and play with it. The issue that everybody's going to have is First Amendment, because political speech, I don't want to go to constitutional law here, but political speech is very, very protected in the courts. Mm-hmm. Lying is actually protected in political speech. Anonymous speech, like Federalist Papers kind of thing, like changing your name, that's protected. So whether or not it's going to be enforceable and whether or not the courts will strike it down is one thing. But my recommendation to them was, just for the love of God, pass something. because if you don't pass anything for fear of First Amendment issues, then we're going to be stuck exactly where we are anyway. So pass something, get it to the courts and let them figure it out.
And we're seeing tech like Sora, the OpenAI's video tool, amazing capabilities, but also concerning for multiple reasons. And it does sound like it's subjective in the intent to deceive.
Yes.
And then also satire.
I know. Yeah, that was the other one.
You don't want to censor satire and just jokes. I get things that pop up on my feed all the time of, leaders from around the world all together, clearly a fake.
Right.
But it also isn't that good yet. So people, I think it's kind of in a bad way, easing people into knowing it's a joke. But there is a point that it's not a joke and people are going to believe that. What's the biggest threat to a campaign with AI, do you think?
So in the presentations that I've been giving, I've so the first one that I gave on AI and elections, the feedback was great presentation, but you scared the crap out of everybody. Yes. Please lighten it up a little bit. Because it was it's just like, hey, look, guys, we're kind of screwed. I'll backtrack that a good amount. But one of the things that I found in some of my research is a term called the liar's dividend. The liar's dividend is basically that the intent of, let's say, bad actors out there that are providing misinformation and disinformation on the internet, be they, internal, external, extranational groups, whatever, is not to dissuade you or influence you on one direction or another on an individual race or campaign or issue. It's to erode the overall trust of the system enough that you don't believe anything on the internet anymore. And honestly, that's where I'm at.
I was going to say, how far along that scale? Everybody's on a scale somewhere.
Everybody's on that scale
everything.
Somewhere. Yeah. But the point is to just drag everybody down all at once, gradually, so that you don't trust anything you see online. So anything, I kind of call it the Schrodinger's cat of political communication. Anything you see online now can be both true or false, depending on your perspective, because there's so much misinformation out there that when anybody even comes to try to combat it and say, well, no, that's not true, it's actually this. It's like, nah, fake news, that doesn't exist. Here are 5 doctored photos to prove that you're wrong, whatever. It just kind of drags everybody down at the same time. The sort of light in the tunnel on that, to me, is that I think that we are moving so far, so fast in the tech bubble, let's say, to where everything is pushing into tech so hard that I think that a good consequence of that liar's dividend could be that people stop trusting what they see online and kind of swing that pendulum back to trust more of interpersonal communication and one-on-one.
I think so.
And I think this is a question that you haven't asked yet, I think, but I think that that's why it will be overall a net positive for lobbyists, because lobbyists, your whole job is interpersonal communication and honestly making friends. It's honestly a great job. You're getting paid well to make friends with people.
Yeah.
And sure, influence them at some point, but most of it is just going around being a nice person, making friends with everyone, and being a good communicator. And I think that with better tools to maximize efficiency and to automate some of the more administrative tasks that we've got out there, which are a lot. I was talking about the lobby day stuff. It's just a lot of administrative stuff. If you can automate more of that, then you can get back to what you were supposed to be doing, which is going around, making friends with people, being seen. I think it'll help people kind of get back to the core of what lobbying is about.
I think so too. And also do more in-person things. There'll be more in-person rallies or live video.
Mm-hmm.
I think people start trusting and watching maybe more official government videos, like committee hearings, because they know those can't be modified or edited. It's illegal to do that.
Right.
So things that we're showing are facts of what actually happened.
Right.
And that helps, I think, people understand. You're mentioning the sides of everything. Everything has two sides.
Right.
And you can choose to believe one or the other. But if you hear it in a committee hearing type of way, you hear both sides of the argument and all the people. So I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You've mentioned one thing that I've told other staff that freaked them out too.
Okay.
And I so want to see, where you are with that in your research. So one of the things you mentioned was how AI is going to impact potentially grassroots campaigns and then lobby campaigns starting this session. So
yeah,
scared staff for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it should, and not to whatever, but staff is already part of that, let's say, problem themselves.
So
Well, because, I heard you mention in the training today that Ledge Counsel estimates that there will be 20,000 plus bills filed this year, or at least sent to them to be drafted and all that. That is an absurd number. It's usually no more than 10 to 12.
Right.
Almost double the number of bills that are being put to them to write and kick back out for filing. And I have zero doubt in my mind it's because of ChatGPT. I think that offices are kicking bills into ChatGPT, or kicking ideas for bills into ChatGPT, having it write the bill, and then they kick that over to Ledge Counsel to formalize, in the style. And I think it's going to be a problem. I think that Ledge Counsel is going to get overwhelmed, and
I feel like they already are.
And it look, they get a lot of crap. They get a lot of crap for being slow and having let's say draconian process of review all the way up the steps to make sure that the bill is right and in form and purpose and everything before they hand it to you to file. Like I said, I've been lobbying for over a decade. I know offices get frustrated with Ledge Counsel for the speed that they need the bills back and all that. It is also a very hard job, and they're going to be overwhelmed if they're not already with the number of bills that are being asked of them. And I think it's going to, lead to some mistakes. And, if I will be very interested to see what the House rules look like after Tuesday.
Sure.
On points of order.
Yeah.
Especially, and bill analysis. Because, like I said, I'm a bill assassin sometimes for hire. And, if ChatGPT is hallucinating and dumping stuff into these bills that then go to Ledge Counsel and hopefully get caught, but maybe not, and then they're filing all of these bills, it's usually, 20% end up passing.
Right.
As the kind of normal average. That's so many bills, and so we'll see. But I think that that's going to be an issue that they're going to have to deal with. And then I think on the staffer's perspective of being scared, everybody else is also using ChatGPT, and they're also going to be using it for talking points and for testimony and for presentations to the Capitol. And we know it hallucinates. And so for the efficiency that I think is going to be made up for the staff in terms of using it to, knock out some of the talking points that they need or whatever, they're also going to have to, I think, vet everything that comes into their office very, very closely and probably check citations, because it's very likely that somebody's going to GPT something up that hallucinates a citation. And, then, my God, what happens when they make laws based on hallucinated data?
Absolutely.
That's a problem.
I do think there are some things they could do for efficiency in the bill drafting thing, though, because I noticed last session I would submit a bill, and then 3 other members had filed a similar request. And then 3 different attorneys had drafted 3 different versions of a bill that were completely different sections of code, modifying and things like that. So that seems inefficient as well. definitely seems like there could be some reform in this area. And maybe, in this era of AI, having something that checks all the requests. So I'm sure most of these are duplicates.
Right.
They're either refiled bills or they're not that original. They might be from another state even or another country. I know I looked at EU legislation last session.
Oh, interesting.
Tried to, especially with data privacy and what they have going on.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some ways AI can help with this. But I think this is the Wild West session. The first one that is Wild West, no regulation, nothing in place, no guardrails. And we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I am personally really looking forward to our expansion into other states so that down the line we can collate all the different states' legislation, you find a bill in Texas and find similar legislation in other states that have been filed, and see what language they did to it and how did that bill work there and that sort of thing. Like, there are so many different cool ways that we can play with this and move forward. It's going to be great. But yeah, I mean, we're going to have to be careful. There's ethics is a big term, and it's a big, heady idea more than anything else. I think it just means you have to be intentional about what you're doing and not be cavalier about what you're developing and how it could impact, let's say, people, could say the world. And I wouldn't have jumped on board with USLege if I had concerns about any of that.
Sure.
I think that the way that you guys set it up initially was the right way of, we're not going to mess with ChatGPT. We're not going to use any of this data to inform the bigger model,
right? Because
we don't have control over that. And it's going to put your stuff out into the world that could end up somewhere else, and it's somebody else's answers. And I think that's, ethically built, and it's going to be something that we are continuously monitoring.
Data privacy for the customer is most important.
Big time.
The one last thing that I am interested to see how this goes are just potentially, any organization that has a lot of money for potentially spam bot farms to spam letters to offices. Like, we got thousands of letters a day.
Yeah.
And that is not knowing if you're working for a senator or a House member, what's a real constituent problem and what's not. Or is someone going to use a spam letter just to bog down the senator and their staff? Right. It could be their opponent or a targeted attack. There's so many new crazy things that could come out.
I know. Yes. And one of the things that I have talked to the team about, and I, down the line, I've got so many ideas of different software offerings we can roll into the overall platform.
For sure.
One of which is specific kind of to that idea of, and we were talking about it internally the other day about, the house member emails and, the first.lat, greg.abbott or, date.phelan or whatever, those emails are junk because they have a transparency requirement and they have to make those emails available to the public. And as a result, they get spammed like crazy. Everybody hits those because those are the ones that the big national bill trackers use. If you want to send an email to your legislator, here's how you do it, and use our software to send a message that you don't like this bill, blah, 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 grassroots advocacy, whatever. I know damn well nobody reads that email.
10 years ago, I did. It was a terrible job.
Yes, it is a terrible job. Yeah.
Hill. I was started as a staff assistant in Congress, and then I got bumped up to LC, legislative correspondent, and my job was reading that email of thousands and thousands of constituents at the time, or haters. That was a funnier one. Funny emails.
Yeah.
And I had to respond to them all personally. My boss at the time was very much a proponent of getting those responded to. I know a lot of members that still are. But how on earth can you respond to all of those individually?
You can't.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
And I would be the one having to write those letters. So it was not fun.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It's my least favorite job.
It's brutal.
I'm not good at it either.
And these especially, newer offices and especially house offices, they don't have the staff to spare to do that.
No.
And I mean, you've got somebody that, yeah, your job is, legislative coordinator, legislative assistant, whatever. But like in session, you don't have time for that. You are working on bills, and those things just stack up 300-400 a day of just exact same subject line, exact same body from 300 different people. It's like, great, thanks, batch, delete. And it happens, and so there is a better way to do that does not involve the public email address and spamming everybody and going crazy on letter writing campaigns. Like, there are better ways to do that. We can use technology. We can make it easier. I've got ideas. We've got ideas. Yes. And I want to bring this stuff forward.
Identify what's real.
Yeah.
Because there are real concerns that get put in there.
Yeah.
And like tragic. I've cried in an office talking to constituents with them because they've been through such ordeals, and they send that email the best of their ability to their senator or house member to the public email.
Yeah.
And it's going to get hidden.
You know what's crazy? When I was talking to venture capital firms back in the day about trying to do something like this, I specifically said, and another thing that I really like about y'all, and I think specifically built on you, is that having had experience being a staffer,
sure,
you want to build it to be staffer friendly.
Yeah.
Right? You want the staff in the Capitol to want people to use this.
Sure.
Because it makes their life easier, it makes your life easier, all the way across the board. And a VC told me, when I said that to him, I was like, I want this to be as staffer friendly as possible. I want to make sure they have buy-in, da 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 da. And I was a staffer too, so it makes sense. He was like, why? Why would you want that? Just bombard them with your information so that they listen to you. And I was like, you have not worked in the building, have you?
Sure.
You have never worked in the Capitol. He's like, no, I haven't. I was like, yeah, that's not done. We don't do that.
For sure.
And it's very clear the people that get it and the people that don't. And you always want to try to convert the people that don't. But the people that get it, I think, really appreciate the attention to detail.
Of course. It's a very niche field.
Yeah.
So definitely, I mean, one of the VCs we talked to recently had been actually a staffer on the Hill.
Oh, yeah.
So that was really cool, actually.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a lot that do, but it's a lot to explain if somebody's completely new to the field.
It's very hard.
I can see that was tricky.
Yeah.
What do you think to the biennial legislature? I definitely think there's pros and cons.
Yeah.
The reason it's designed is designed to kill bills, right? As many as possible, keep a conservative, limited government. But what do you think about it now as it relates to tech and innovation going so fast?
It's brutal. I mean, tech always outpaces government. Always.
Right.
No matter what.
Sure.
But at least, I mean, I would say in Congress, but Congress doesn't do a whole lot to begin with. In these other states that are either at least once a year for a time or year round, they can address it almost in real time. At least a little behind, but they can address it quicker.
Right.
Man, it's tough in Texas. I mean, we're one of three states that do biennial.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get it. It's based around not having career politicians, and they go home to do their real jobs. And they don't get paid much of anything. It's like $6,000 a year, maybe, to be a legislator. But man, it makes it hard to respond to stuff. I mean, it puts a lot. I mean, literally 3/4 of the biennium is interim and is state agency work. And so that puts so much more of the work in the state agencies than it is in the legislature.
Right.
And so it's tough to respond to things quickly. It's tough to, and especially during the session here, it's 6 months. It's really only about a month and a half to 2 months that real bill movement happens. It's like March to the end of April. May is where it like crunch time, but like the deep conversations about things. I mean, committees don't even come out till end of January, beginning of February. Then it takes them a couple of weeks to get their feet under them and start getting bills to them. So, I mean, the real meat of it's only like 60, 80 days,
right.
And so, I mean, that's not very long out of 2 years to be doing this stuff. But, I mean, whatever, we're Texas, we do it weird, just, we do our own thing. But it is hard.
You made an interesting point about the agencies taking on a lot of work, because I think for those people who don't know much about how the rulemaking process works, they're doing this year round. They can impact law. Do you mind sharing more for those who don't know, just what state agencies do and why they're getting more bogged down with this?
Yeah, so state agencies are part of the executive branch, which is like the governor. But all the state agencies are part of the executive branch. We got the legislative branch, obviously the Capitol over here, and then the judicial is, all the courts. I mean, the state agencies basically they've got some leeway to do stuff on their own, but once bills pass, they have to be implemented by state agencies. And, some of these agencies are enormous. I mean, HHSC, the Health and Human Services Commission, is like the largest state employer, at least.
Right.
I mean, they've got like 100,000 employees, maybe.
Right.
Crazy. But I mean, they also manage Medicaid and all the big stuff. So, they continuously work. If it's a licensing kind of agency, like nurses, doctors, real estate, whatever, then they're continually working on enforcement matters of, did this doctor do something bad? We need to bring them up and have a complaint and take their license away or whatever. And then they're also continuously promulgating rules. They have to put them out for public comment. They have a whole hearing. People come and yell at them about it. And then they decide whether or not they're going to adopt them anyway. And it's, working on the profession, working on the thing, Medicaid, how we deliver services, et cetera, et cetera. And that's ongoing all year long. The Ethics Commission, the one that I follow all the time. I go to all the meetings. I'm one of the only people in the public that actually shows up to all their meetings in person.
Nobody knows when they are.
They don't know when they are. It's easier to watch online.
Some aren't televised.
I know Donna Howard, I think, has a bill every session to force every state agency and subcommittee and all that to televise all of their meetings.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, I want to go lobby for that because, that's a good government bill. Transparency. Let's see what you're doing so I don't have to get up out of my office and go drive over there and sit around for 7 hours while you probably don't talk about what I care about anyway. It's
right.
Tedious. So, it's very tedious. So, they do a lot of work. They do a lot of good work. But it is a lot of different agencies to keep track of depending on what area of industry you're in.
And we work with a lot of state agencies now. And from their perspective, there'll be bills filed randomly that they didn't know that they had anything to do with. And the bills will say, name the agency by name and say, this agency is going to be responsible for this piece of legislation. And they'll go, oh, great, another one. And they have to do with that for every piece to make sure they're not missing anything, become that subject matter expert. So they usually have huge GR teams that handle this.
And then if they screw something up, they get ripped at the Capitol for it.
It's a hard job.
It is a hard job.
I have a lot of sympathy for everybody in an agency right now.
Me too.
So before we close, I want to ask you what advice you would give to anybody starting out in the government relations world or in law, in this kind of political law.
Yeah.
What advice would you give?
So I've got probably 3 things.
Okay.
One is that, the legislative and kind of campaign law area does not have very many lawyers in it. I randomly fell into this. I did not go to law school for this. I didn't particularly love law school to begin with. I didn't like a lot of the subjects that I had to take, I fell into this and I liked it. Do what you like to do. If you like this, get into it because there are not very many lawyers in it. And there's enough to go around to everybody for sure in terms of clients. Especially legal, lawyers, I would say my advice is, it's going to be controversial, but if you don't like your job, quit your job.
It's not controversial.
I mean,
rock and roll.
My resume, yeah, right. I know. Yeah, do it. My resume, if I weren't getting into this, I probably wouldn't get hired anywhere else because my resume is brutal. It's like,
how so?
Well, because I've quit the last 4 jobs that I've been in. And it wasn't like we're downsizing and you got to go, or I got a new job and I'm going to go up to this. I just straight walk into an office and quit both of the last 2 jobs that I was in because I either felt myself getting stuck there and pigeonholed into an area of law that I didn't want to do for the rest of my life.
Sure.
Or I had other grander plans and made a pitch to them to be a part of it, and they didn't want to be a part of it. And so I just quit my job right on the spot. And it's a scary thing to do. Yeah. It is a very scary thing to do. At the time, when I quit my last job, I have a wife, still have a wife.
Yeah.
And at the time, my son was 3.
I was going to say, security is always hard to leave.
It's hard to leave. It's same with retirement and health benefits and da. It's hard to leave that all behind. But man, it is so much more freeing to just go and at least try to go and do what you want to do. It is so much more fulfilling.
Yes.
So then the last thing is advice I got from my first boss in the Capitol, Pete Gallego. And when I first started working at the Capitol, he said, okay, Andy, I'm going to give you 1 year, 12 months to work in my office. And then I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to ask if you still want to do it.
Sure.
And I was like, okay. And he was like, wait, why? I'll be fine, dude. I'm good. I like it here. He said, because if you stay in politics for more than 1 year, you will get dragged into it and sucked in forever. So you got to make sure that this is actually what you want to do long term. And a year went by, true to his word, brought me in. He's like, okay, it's been a year. Do you want to do this forever? You want to get out now? I was like, whatever, dude. I can quit anytime. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. I'm having a good time. And he's like, okay, we'll see. Now here we are.
Yeah.
15 years later, I'm still doing it. So, the Capitol itself is busy. It's crazy. It is a lot of fun. And the energy of walking around the Capitol when a lot of big stuff is going on is, I can't find a better way to say that, it's seductive.
Yeah, it's addictive. It's really fun.
It is so much fun, and it will ruin you for an office job behind a desk.
Sure.
So just keep that in mind. If that's something that you want to do, great. And actually, the last piece is, the House and Senate job application process is a box to check off, but that's not the way to get a job at the Capitol.
What's the best way?
Know somebody and talk to them, find somebody that has worked there before and get to know them, ask them for any recommendation, anybody that they know in the Capitol that you can apply to, and they will move your resume up to the top of the stack. That's the way to get a job at the Capitol.
So much is trust. I totally agree with you.
Trust and friendships.
I moved to the U.S. when I was 17 and a half from the U.K. Didn't know anybody, but I had to get to know people. I wanted to get into politics. And I went to every event on campus. met every speaker, got, recommendations from them, and then, went and got coffee, got to know them. And that's how I found out about every political job I've ever done.
Yeah.
From my first in the US Senate.
Yeah.
Like, I applied, didn't hear back.
Yep.
It was only when I made a call to one of the people who'd been a wonderful mentor of mine in college, who made a call, and I immediately got the job. It was a referral. So it's definitely a who you know, but you have to hustle to get there. Like, you can't just know everybody.
Absolutely. And relationships matter. Your reputation matters a lot. So protect it. Don't be a sloppy drunk around people at the Capitol if you can avoid it. Because your reputation around here matters a whole lot. And
don't date in the Capitol. That's my tip. My big tip. I know people find love.
Oh man. Yeah. Good luck.
I never did. From Capitol Hill, I thought, nope, I can't date anyone on Capitol Hill. Because it could just be drama, just drama.
It is drama. People ask all the time, is the Capitol like high school with all the gossips and rumors? I'm like, no, it's worse. It's middle school. It is. I mean, you see all the same people all the time. That's what happens. And so, just, go in, work hard, have fun. It's a great life.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I would love to have you on the show again. I actually have way more questions for you, but I know we have to wrap. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, let's do it again. Happy to.
Sounds good.
Thanks.